The rain hammered against the windows of the yellow cab as it crawled through Manhattan's evening traffic. Emma Clark pressed her phone against her ear, wincing at the sharp tone cutting through the speaker. "Emma, where are you? The partners are already here. This dinner is important." Marcus's voice carried that edge she'd been hearing more frequently lately. Impatient, demanding, leaving no room for discussion. "I know, Marcus. I'm in the cab right now. Traffic is terrible because of the rain, but I should be there in 20 minutes, Emma replied, watching the brake lights ahead blur into red streaks through the water-streaked window. 20 minutes? Emma, you were supposed to be here 30 minutes ago. Do you understand what tonight means for my career, or our future? Emma closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight settle in her chest. Our future. The words that once filled her with excitement now felt like chains. "I understand. I'll be there as soon as I can." The call ended without a goodbye. Emma stared at her phone screen at the photo of her and Marcus from last summer in the Hamptons. They looked happy. She tried to remember when that feeling had started to fade, when his ambition had begun to eclipse everything else, including her. "Bad traffic tonight, miss," the cab driver said, his accent thick and warm. "This rain, it makes everyone forget how to drive." Emma managed to smile. "It's okay. I'm not in a rush anymore." The words surprised her as they left her mouth, but they felt true. The cab turned onto a quieter street in the West Village, trying to find a faster route. The buildings here were older, more intimate than the steel giants of Midtown. Emma had always loved this neighborhood. The tree-lined streets, the small cafes with their glowing windows, the sense that life here moved at a more human pace. "Miss, you see that?" The driver's voice pulled her attention forward. Through the rain, Emma spotted a figure slumped against a brick wall near the corner. Even from a distance, something about the scene struck her as wrong. The person wasn't moving, and in this weather, on this empty street, that couldn't be good. "Can you pull over?" Emma heard herself say. "Miss, I don't think—" "Please." Just for a moment, the cab stopped, and Emma pushed open the door before she could second-guess herself. The November rain was cold, immediately soaking through her burgundy dress, the one she'd spent 2 hours choosing for Marcus's important dinner. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement as she approached the figure. It was a man, she realized, dressed in what had clearly been an expensive suit before it became soaked and stained. He was slumped awkwardly, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, and even in the dim streetlight, Emma could see blood seeping through his white shirt, mixing with the rain. "Oh my God," she whispered, kneeling beside him without thinking about her dress or the water or anything except the fact that another human being was hurt and alone. "Sir, can you hear me?" She touched his shoulder gently. He was cold, too cold. His eyes fluttered open, striking blue even in the darkness, confused and unfocused. I don't." His accent was British, refined, each word carefully formed despite his obvious pain. "It's okay. Don't try to talk. I'm going to help you." Emma pulled out her phone with shaking hands, immediately dialing 911. As she relayed the address to the dispatcher, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. "Marcus," she declined it. "Ambulance is on the way," she told the stranger, taking off her coat and draping it over him. The rain soaked through her dress immediately, but she didn't care. "Can you tell me what happened? Were you mugged?" He tried to focus on her face, struggling with consciousness. "Didn't see them. 3 men took—" He gestured vaguely to his pocket, then winced in pain. "Doesn't matter. Everything matters right now. You matter." Emma pressed her hand against his side where the bleeding seemed worst, applying pressure like she'd learned in a first aid course years ago. The warmth of his blood against her palm made everything suddenly, terrifyingly real. "Stay with me, okay? Keep your eyes open. What's your name?" "Alexander," he managed, his blue eyes finding hers with sudden intensity. "Your dress. You're ruining." "It's just a dress." Emma felt tears mixing with rain on her face, though she wasn't sure why she was crying. Maybe it was the vulnerability in this stranger's eyes, or the realization that he was more concerned about her dress than his own life. Or maybe it was everything. Marcus, the dinner, the life she'd been living that suddenly felt so hollow compared to this raw, real moment. Her phone buzzed again and again, text messages from Marcus flooding in. "Where are you? Emma, this is unacceptable. The partners are asking about you. Call me now. You need to go." Alexander whispered, noticing her phone. "Someone's waiting." "No one who matters more than this," Emma replied, surprised by the certainty in her voice. She silenced her phone and focused entirely on him. "Tell me something, Alexander. Where are you from?" "England, Northumberland." Each word seemed to cost him effort. "Here for business." "Stupid to walk alone. Thought I knew the city." "New York can be dangerous if you don't know where you're going," Emma said, trying to keep him talking, keep him conscious. "I grew up here. Brooklyn, actually. Moved to Manhattan for college and never left. I work at an art gallery in Soho. Nothing fancy, but I love it. The owner, Mrs. Chen, she's taught me everything about art, about seeing beauty in unexpected places." She was rambling, she knew, but Alexander's eyes stayed on her face, and that's what mattered. In the distance, sirens grew louder. "You're kind," he said softly. "Rare in this city. In any city. You just haven't met the right people," Emma replied, managing a smile despite everything. "There's kindness everywhere if you know where to look. My grandmother used to say that. She raised me after my parents died, taught me that helping someone isn't about whether you can afford to, it's about whether you can afford not to." The ambulance pulled up, red lights painting the wet street in urgent colors. Paramedics rushed over with a stretcher and equipment, their movements efficient and practiced. "Ma'am, we've got him now." one of them said, gently moving Emma aside, but Alexander's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. "Don't go," he said. His blue eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Please, I'll follow in the cab," Emma promised. "I won't leave you alone." They loaded him into the ambulance, and Emma rushed back to the waiting taxi. Her phone had been buzzing continuously. 12 missed calls from Marcus. 23 text messages. The last one made her heart sink. "It's him or us, Emma. Choose." She stared at those words as the cab followed the ambulance toward Mount Sinai Hospital. Him or us. As if there was a competition. As if helping another human being was somehow a betrayal. Marcus didn't even know what had happened. Didn't care enough to find out. He only cared that she'd disrupted his perfect evening. Emma's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could explain, she could apologize, she could promise to make it up to him. But as she looked at her reflection in the cab's window, hair ruined, makeup running, dress stained with blood and rainwater, she saw someone she almost didn't recognize. When had she become so small? When had she started measuring her worth by Marcus's approval? She typed a simple response. "I choose him. I choose the kind of person who stops to help. If you can't understand that, then maybe we want different things." The response came within seconds. "We're done. I'll announce it tonight. Everyone here already knows you couldn't be bothered to show up." Emma felt the tears come then, hot and fast, mixing with the cold rain still dripping from her hair. 3 years with Marcus, an engagement ring she'd helped design, plans for a summer wedding at his family's estate in Connecticut, all of it dissolving in a few text messages because she'd chosen compassion over convenience. "You okay, miss?" the cab driver asked gently. "I don't know," Emma admitted. "I just ended my engagement. The man worth marrying would have been out here with you, helping," the driver said wisely. "My wife, she's a nurse. Works crazy hours. Sometimes I don't see her for days, but I know that when someone needs help, she's there. That's who she is. Made me fall in love with her, that big heart. Your man didn't see that in you. That's his loss." Emma smiled through her tears. "Thank you. What's your name?" "Ahmad." "Thank you, Ahmad, for everything." At the hospital, Emma sat in the emergency waiting room, her coat draped over her ruined dress, watching the minutes tick by on the sterile wall clock. Other people filled the plastic chairs around her, a mother with a feverish child, an elderly man holding his chest, a young couple arguing in hushed Spanish, each of them carrying their own crisis, their own moment where everything had changed. Emma's phone had gone silent. Either Marcus had said everything he needed to say, or he was already spinning the story to his partners, painting her as unreliable, flaky, not suited for the life he was building. Part of her wanted to be angry, but mostly she just felt tired of performing, of being the perfect girlfriend, of shrinking herself to fit into Marcus's ambitious world. "Family of Alexander Ashford?" A doctor appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. Emma stood, then hesitated. "I'm not family. I'm the one who found him. I just wanted to make sure he's okay." The doctor studied her for a moment, taking in the blood-stained dress, the genuine concern in her eyes. "He's stable. The knife wound wasn't as deep as it looked, fortunately. Missed anything vital. He'll need to stay overnight for observation, but he should make a full recovery. He's been asking for you." "He has? Won't stop, actually. Quite insistent for someone who's been through trauma." The doctor smiled slightly. "Room 304 if you'd like to see him, just for a few minutes. He needs rest." Emma followed the doctor through the maze of corridors, her wet shoes squeaking against the linoleum. Room 304 was at the end of a quiet hallway. She pushed open the door gently. Alexander lay in the hospital bed, looking somehow both vulnerable and dignified. His dark hair was still damp, pushed back from his face, revealing sharp cheekbones and a strong jawline. Without the blood and rain, Emma could see how handsome he was, but more than that, there was something in his eyes, a depth that made her want to know his story. "You stayed," he said, his voice stronger now, touched with wonder. "I promised I would." Emma moved closer to the bed. "The doctor says you're going to be fine. Because of you." Alexander's blue eyes held hers. "If you hadn't stopped, if you'd kept driving." "But I did stop. Anyone would have." "No," he said firmly. "No, they wouldn't have. I've learned that most people look away from inconvenient truths, from uncomfortable situations. You didn't." "Why?" Emma thought about it, about her grandmother's words, about the person she'd tried to be even when it wasn't easy. "Because I'd want someone to stop for me. Because we're all just one bad moment away from needing help. Because," she paused, surprised by the tears threatening again, "because tonight I learned that the person I thought I was going to marry wouldn't have stopped, and I needed to prove to myself that I'm not like him." Alexander studied her face with an intensity that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced in years. "The dinner, the person who was waiting, that was my fiancé, ex-fiancé now." Emma tried to smile, but it wavered. "He gave me an ultimatum, told me to choose between helping you and our relationship, so I chose. I'm sorry." The regret in Alexander's voice was genuine, painful. "I've cost you." "You didn't cost me anything," Emma interrupted. "You gave me clarity. Sometimes we need strangers to show us who we really are." She glanced at the clock on the wall. "I should let you rest. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." "Wait." Alexander reached out, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she felt the warmth. "I don't even know your name. You saved my life, and I don't know your name." Emma Clark." Emma," he repeated, as if memorizing it. "Thank you for everything, for your kindness, your courage, your coat." He smiled slightly, "Though I fear it's ruined. It's just a coat." "You're welcome, Alexander. Take care of yourself. Be more careful in New York." As Emma turned to leave, Alexander called out once more, "Emma, I'd like to repay you somehow, for what you did, for what you lost, because of me." Emma looked back at him, at this stranger who had somehow changed the entire trajectory of her life in a single evening. "You don't owe me anything. Just pay it forward. Help someone else when you can. That's payment enough." The cab ride back to her apartment in the East Village felt surreal. Emma stared out the window at the city lights blurred by rain, at the people hurrying beneath umbrellas, at the life continuing around her, while her own had fractured into before and after. Her apartment was small, a fifth-floor walk-up with barely enough room for a bed, a tiny kitchen, and walls covered with art prints she'd collected over the years, but it was hers. Marcus had always wanted her to move into his place in Murray Hill, complained about the stairs and the size and the neighborhood. Now she was grateful she'd kept this space, this independence. Sarah called as Emma was peeling off her ruined dress. "Emma, oh my God, I just saw Marcus's Facebook post. He announced your engagement is over." "What happened?" Emma sank onto her bed, suddenly exhausted. "I helped someone tonight, Sarah, a stranger who was bleeding on the street, and Marcus couldn't accept that I chose saving a life over his dinner party." "He's unbelievable," Sarah fumed. "No, wait, he's completely believable, which is worse. I've been biting my tongue for months, but you know you deserve better, right? Someone who sees your huge heart as an asset, not an inconvenience." "I'm starting to realize that." Emma's voice cracked, "but it still hurts." 3 years, Sarah. I thought we were building something." "You were building something. He was building a resume wife. There's a difference. This stranger you helped, was he okay?" Emma told her everything. The rain, the blood, the hospital, the way Alexander had looked at her like she'd done something extraordinary when she'd only done what felt right. "Wow," Sarah breathed when Emma finished. "That's intense. Like movie-level intense. Did you get his number?" "Sarah, he was stabbed and I just ended my engagement." "I'm not thinking about. I'm just saying the universe works in mysterious ways. You lost one man who didn't appreciate you and saved another who clearly does. I'm not suggesting anything. Just stay open, okay? Tonight changed everything. Let it." After they hung up, Emma stood under a hot shower until the water ran clear, washing away the rain and blood and tears. But she couldn't wash away the memory of Alexander's blue eyes, the way he'd thanked her, the strange connection she'd felt kneeling beside him on that wet street. She found the coat she'd given him, forgotten in the ambulance chaos. In its pocket was her apartment key and a small notepad she always carried for jotting down art ideas. She pulled it out and was surprised to find a new page writing that wasn't hers. "Emma Clark, you gave me more than help tonight. You reminded me that goodness exists in unexpected places. I won't forget." Below the note was an embossed seal, elegant and formal, showing a coat of arms Emma didn't recognize. When had he written this? In the ambulance, despite his injuries? The gesture touched something deep in her chest. Emma placed the note on her nightstand and turned off the light. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, and New York hummed its endless song of sirens and traffic and life continuing regardless of individual heartbreak. She'd lost her engagement tonight, lost the future she'd been planning, lost the security of knowing what came next. But as she drifted toward sleep, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she'd also found something. Not Alexander specifically. That would be absurd, a fairy tale. But herself, the person who stopped, the person who chose compassion, the person who refused to look away. And somehow, despite everything, that felt like the beginning of something rather than the end. 2 weeks had passed since that rainy November night, but Emma still found herself thinking about it at the strangest moments. While arranging a new exhibition at the gallery, while making coffee in the morning, while walking past the street corner where she'd found Alexander. The note with the embossed seal remained on her nightstand, though she'd told herself a dozen times to throw it away. It was just a thank you from a stranger, nothing more. She'd probably never see him again, and that was fine. That was how life worked, except it didn't feel fine. "Emma, can you help me with this lighting?" Mrs. Chen's voice pulled her back to the present. The gallery owner stood beneath a spotlight, adjusting its angle toward a massive canvas of abstract blues and golds. Of course. Emma climbed the small ladder, grateful for the distraction. Work had been her salvation these past 2 weeks. The gallery, a modest but respected space in Soho called Chen Contemporary, had become her refuge from the aftermath of her broken engagement. Marcus had indeed announced their split that night, painting himself as the victim of Emma's erratic behavior. Mutual friends had chosen sides, most of them his. Emma's social media had been flooded with questions she'd ignored. Her mother had called from Florida, concerned and confused. Through it all, Emma had simply kept moving forward, one day at a time. "This exhibition is going to be magnificent," Mrs. Chen said, stepping back to admire their work. At 63, with silver hair always pulled into an elegant bun and reading glasses perpetually perched on her nose, Mrs. Chen had become more than a boss to Emma. She was a mentor, sometimes even a surrogate mother. "Thanks to your vision," Emma replied, climbing down. I still can't believe we got Giovanni Rossi's entire collection. His work is incredible. Well, we have you to thank for that. Your proposal letter to his agent was what sealed the deal. Mrs. Chen smiled warmly. You have a gift, Emma, not just for seeing art, but for understanding what it means to people. That's rare. Emma felt a flush of pride. After the chaos with Marcus, Mrs. Chen's faith in her abilities meant everything. What time do guests arrive tonight? 7 o'clock, and Emma, I should mention, this isn't just a regular exhibition opening. We have some rather important attendees coming. European collectors, a few members of aristocracy who are in New York for a cultural exchange program. Mrs. Chen's eyes sparkled with excitement. This could put our little gallery on the international map. Aristocracy? Emma's stomach tightened. Like actual titled people? A duke, I believe, and some ladies and lords. Don't look so nervous. They're just people who appreciate art like anyone else. Well, people with considerably more money, but still. Mrs. Chen squeezed Emma's shoulder. You'll be wonderful. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. If only it were that simple. Emma had learned over the past 2 weeks that herself was still a work in progress, still figuring out who she was without Marcus's expectations shaping her choices. The afternoon passed in a blur of final preparations. Emma changed into the outfit she'd brought, a simple black dress, elegant but understated, paired with the silver earrings her grandmother had left her. Nothing too flashy. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She just wanted to blend into the background and let the art speak for itself. By 6:30, the gallery had transformed. Soft lighting illuminated Rossi's paintings, each one a meditation on color and emotion. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Emma stood near the entrance, greeting early arrivals, her practiced smile hiding the nervousness churning in her stomach. Sarah had wanted to come for moral support, but Emma had declined. This was work. Professional. She needed to prove she could handle it on her own. The first wave of guests arrived. Local collectors, art critics from the Times and the New Yorker, gallery owners from Chelsea. Emma recognized most of them, had sent them invitations personally. She slipped into her role easily, discussing the paintings with genuine enthusiasm, connecting people with shared interests. Then, at 7:15, the atmosphere in the gallery shifted. A small group entered, and Emma immediately understood what Mrs. Chen had meant about aristocracy. These people carried themselves differently. Not arrogantly exactly, but with a kind of innate confidence that came from generations of breeding and privilege. The women wore gowns that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent. The men's suits were so perfectly tailored they looked like second skins. And at the center of the group, tall and commanding in a dark navy suit, was Alexander. Emma's breath caught. She hadn't recognized him at first. He looked so different from the rain-soaked, bleeding stranger she'd helped. His dark hair was styled perfectly, his strong jawline clean-shaven, his blue eyes alert and healthy. He moved through the gallery with natural authority, people instinctively making space for him. Their eyes met across the room. Emma saw the moment recognition hit him. His steps faltered, his expression shifting from polite interest to complete shock. He stopped moving entirely, causing the people around him to pause in confusion. Your Grace, is everything all right? A woman beside him asked. She was beautiful, with dark hair swept into an intricate updo, wearing a green dress that probably cost more than Emma's car. Her British accent marked her as part of his circle. Yes, excuse me for a moment. Alexander's gaze never left Emma as he crossed the gallery toward her. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. She was vaguely aware of people watching, of conversations pausing, but all she could focus on was Alexander getting closer, his blue eyes filled with something she couldn't quite name. Surprise? Relief? Something more? Emma, her name on his lips sounded different than she remembered. Stronger, clearer, but still carrying that same intensity from the hospital. I can't believe you work here. I do. I'm the assistant curator. Emma's voice came out steadier than she felt. You're a duke? Alexander Ashford, Duke of Northumberland. He said it almost apologetically. I should have mentioned that in the hospital, but it didn't seem relevant at the time. Nothing seemed relevant except that you'd saved my life. Your Grace, we really should. The beautiful woman in green had followed him, her tone carrying a hint of impatience. Catherine, please give me a moment, Alexander said, his tone polite but firm. This is important. Catherine's eyes swept over Emma with barely concealed disdain, taking in her simple dress, her lack of jewelry beyond her grandmother's earrings, her obvious status as staff rather than guest. Of course, Your Grace. I'll be viewing the collection. The words were courteous, but the dismissal was clear. After she glided away, Alexander turned back to Emma, concern creasing his brow. I tried to find you. I asked the hospital for your information, but they wouldn't release it for privacy reasons. I sent flowers to what I thought was your address, but they came back. I was beginning to think I'd never see you again. You tried to find me? Emma's surprise was genuine. Why? Alexander looked at her as if the answer should be obvious. Because you changed everything that night. Because I needed to know you were okay. Needed to properly thank you. He paused, something vulnerable flashing across his face. I needed to see you again. The honesty in his words made Emma's chest tighten. Around them, The gallery buzzed with conversation, but it felt like they were in a bubble, separate from everything else. "I'm glad you're okay," Emma said softly. You look like a completely different person than the one I found in the rain." "I feel like a different person." Alexander's gaze held hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. "That night you asked me to pay it forward, to help someone else, but I can't stop thinking that I want to help you. You lost your engagement because of me, because you chose to help a stranger over your own plans." "I lost my engagement because my fiancé couldn't understand basic human decency," Emma corrected gently. "That's not your fault. Honestly, you probably did me a favor. I just didn't know I needed saving too." A slight smile touched Alexander's lips. "We saved each other then." "Emma!" Mrs. Chen appeared at her elbow, her eyes bright with excitement. "I see you've met the Duke of Northumberland. Your Grace, we're so honored to have you here tonight." "The honor is mine, Mrs. Chen. You have an exceptional gallery, and an even more exceptional employee." Alexander's words were formal, but his eyes remained on Emma. "Miss Clark was just telling me about Giovanni Rossi's work. Her insights are remarkable." Emma blinked. She hadn't been telling him anything about Rossi, but she understood what Alexander was doing, elevating her in front of her employer, giving her credit, protecting her reputation. "Emma is invaluable to us," Mrs. Chen agreed, beaming with pride. "She has such a natural eye for art and people. She's the one who convinced Rossi's agent that our gallery was the right home for this collection. I can see why she succeeded. Miss Clark is very persuasive." The way Alexander said it, with a hint of warmth in his formal tone, made Emma's cheeks flush. "Your Grace, we'd love to give you a private tour of the collection," Mrs. Chen offered. "Emma, would you mind?" "Of course not." Emma gestured toward the main exhibition space, hyper-aware of Alexander walking beside her, of the way people watched them, whispered. As they moved through the gallery, Emma fell into familiar territory, discussing Rossi's use of color, the emotional progression through his series, the technical brilliance behind seemingly simple compositions. She'd studied these paintings for weeks, had written extensively about them in her proposal. Talking about art always calmed her, centered her. "You're passionate about this," Alexander observed as she explained Rossi's inspiration for a particular piece, a meditation on loss rendered in shades of blue. "Art is one of the few ways we can truly communicate what's inside us," Emma said, studying the painting. "Words fail so often, but color, form, emotion captured on canvas, it speaks a universal language. Like kindness on a rainy street," Alexander said quietly. "That was its own kind of art, the art of being human when it would have been easier not to be." Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the title and the expensive suit to the man who'd gripped her wrist in the ambulance, who'd asked her not to leave. "You would have done the same thing if our positions were reversed." "I'd like to think so, but I'm not sure I would have had your courage." Alexander's honesty was disarming. "I've lived my entire life in a world where every action is calculated, where spontaneous compassion is complicated. You reminded me that some things are supposed to be simple." "Nothing about that night felt simple," Emma admitted. "It felt like standing at a crossroads, and whichever direction I chose would change everything. And you chose the right path." "Did I?" Emma's voice carried the weight of the past 2 weeks. The loneliness, the questions, the moments of doubt in the middle of the night. "Sometimes I wonder if I just chose a different kind of complicated." Before Alexander could respond, Catherine appeared with another couple, her smile brittle. "Your Grace, Lord and Lady Pemberton would love to discuss the Rossi collection with you. They're considering a similar acquisition for their estate." "Of course." Alexander's expression shifted back to formal courtesy, but he glanced at Emma with what looked like regret. "Miss Clark, thank you for the excellent tour." "You're welcome, Your Grace." Emma managed a small smile, then retreated toward the gallery's back office, needing a moment to breathe, to process, to understand what had just happened. The rest of the evening passed in a strange duality. Emma continued her duties, answering questions, facilitating introductions, ensuring the event ran smoothly, while constantly aware of Alexander across the room. She caught him watching her several times, their eyes meeting before one of them looked away. She also noticed Catherine watching her, the beautiful woman's gaze calculating and cold. During a quiet moment, Emma overheard a conversation between Catherine and another guest near the sculpture display. "Who is that girl?" the other woman asked. "The one the Duke keeps staring at?" "Just staff, darling, though apparently she fancies herself something more." Catherine's laugh was like ice. "She doesn't understand that people like us don't mix with people like her. Our world has rules, traditions, expectations. A shop girl playing curator isn't going to change that." Emma felt the words like slaps, each one a reminder that she and Alexander existed in different universes. She'd known it, of course, but hearing it stated so bluntly drove the point home. What had she been thinking, imagining there was some connection between them? He was a duke. She was a gallery assistant who lived in a fifth-floor walk-up and had student loans she'd be paying off for another decade. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Emma busied herself with cleanup, grateful for the distraction. Mrs. Chen had left an hour earlier, trusting Emma to close up. It was nearly 10 o'clock when Emma heard footsteps behind her. "You're avoiding me." Alexander's voice startled her. She'd thought he'd left with the others. Emma turned to find him alone in the gallery, his jacket off and draped over his arm, looking somehow more real without the crowd around them. "I'm working." "You're hiding." He set his jacket on a nearby bench and moved closer. "Because of what Catherine said." "You overheard her." "I wasn't eavesdropping." "I know. Catherine was making sure you'd hear." She's protective of certain expectations. Alexander's jaw tightened. She was also incredibly rude, and I apologize on her behalf. You don't need to apologize. She was just being honest. Emma wrapped her arms around herself. We live in different worlds, Your Grace. That night in the rain we were just two people. But here in reality you're a duke and I'm— She gestured vaguely at the gallery, at herself. I'm someone who works for a living, who takes the subway, who probably couldn't even afford to be a guest at an event like tonight. Do you think I care about any of that? The frustration in Alexander's voice surprised her. Maybe you don't, but the world does. Your world does. Emma met his eyes. I heard Catherine mention expectations, traditions, rules. I'm guessing those are important to people in your position. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight Emma hadn't heard before. They are. My family has certain requirements, obligations that come with the title. There are people who expect me to marry within a certain circle, to choose someone who understands the responsibilities, the public scrutiny, the duties that come with being a duchess. Someone like Catherine, Emma said, though the words tasted bitter. Someone like Catherine, Alexander confirmed. But here's what I've learned in the 2 weeks since that night in the rain. I don't want someone who understands the duties. I want someone who understands me. Emma's heart skipped. Alexander, Your Grace, a man's voice interrupted from the gallery entrance. An older gentleman in an immaculate suit stood there, his expression patient but pointed. The car is waiting. We have the embassy dinner at 11. Alexander's shoulders tensed. Yes, James, I'll be right there. He turned back to Emma, and in his eyes she saw a mirror of her own frustration. Two people standing close but kept apart by invisible walls. May I see you again? Outside of chance encounters and gallery events? Emma knew she should say no. Knew that getting involved with someone from his world would only lead to heartbreak. That she'd just escaped one relationship where she'd felt insufficient and shouldn't walk straight into another. But looking at Alexander, remembering how he'd seen her on that rainy street, how he'd thanked her for kindness as if it were extraordinary, she found herself nodding. Coffee, she said. Something normal. No titles or formal events, just two people talking. Relief flooded Alexander's face. Tomorrow? There's a cafe in Brooklyn I've been told is excellent. Cafe Grumpy in Greenpoint? Emma laughed despite everything. You've done your research. I wanted to be prepared in case I ever found you again. Alexander smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger, less burdened. Is 10 o'clock too early? 10 is perfect. Your Grace, James called again, more insistent this time. I'm coming. Alexander picked up his jacket but paused before leaving. Emma, whatever Catherine or anyone else says about different worlds, they're wrong. That night you showed me that the things that matter most are universal. Kindness, courage, compassion, those don't have class divisions. He left before Emma could respond, his footsteps echoing through the empty gallery. She stood there for a long time after he'd gone, surrounded by Rossi's paintings about loss and hope, and the complicated beauty of human emotion. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. How was the event? Emma looked around the gallery, at the evidence of a successful evening, at the space where Alexander had stood just moments ago. How could she possibly explain what had happened? That the stranger she'd saved was a dupe? That he'd tried to find her? That she'd agreed to see him again despite every logical reason not to? She typed back, complicated. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. Is complicated good or bad? Emma thought about that as she locked up the gallery and stepped out into the cool November night. The city hummed around her, millions of people living their separate lives, occasionally colliding in ways that changed everything. I honestly don't know yet, she finally replied, but I think I'm about to find out. As Emma walked toward the subway, she caught her reflection in a darkened shop window. She looked different somehow, not as uncertain as she'd been these past 2 weeks. Maybe it was seeing Alexander again, or maybe it was simply realizing that her life was her own to shape, not something determined by other people's expectations. Tomorrow she'd meet Alexander for coffee. Tomorrow she'd take one small step toward whatever this was becoming. And if Catherine's words about different worlds proved true, at least Emma would know she'd been brave enough to try. Sometimes, she thought, remembering that rainy night, the right choice isn't the easiest one. Sometimes it's the one that requires you to kneel in the rain, to risk your heart, to believe that connection matters more than consequence. Emma descended into the subway station, already counting the hours until 10 o'clock. Emma arrived at Cafe Grumpy 15 minutes early, her nerves getting the better of her. The morning was crisp and clear, the kind of November day where the sunlight felt precious, like a gift before winter truly settled in. She'd changed outfits 3 times before settling on jeans, boots, and a cream-colored sweater. Casual, comfortable herself. The cafe was busy with the Saturday morning crowd. Artists with laptops, families with small children, couples lingering over pastries. Emma ordered a latte and claimed a small table near the window, watching people pass by on the sidewalk outside. Greenpoint had always been one of her favorite Brooklyn neighborhoods, still holding on to its artistic soul despite the inevitable gentrification creeping through. At exactly 10 o'clock, she saw him. Alexander walked down the street in dark jeans and a gray sweater under a casual jacket, and Emma was struck again by how different he looked from the formal duke at the gallery. His hair was slightly windswept, his expression less guarded. When he spotted her through the window, his face broke into a genuine smile that made her stomach flip. He entered the cafe, and Emma noticed several people glance his way, not because they recognized him, but because he had that quality some people possess, a magnetism that drew attention without trying. "I was worried you might not come," Alexander said, sliding into the chair across from her. "I was worried about the same thing," Emma admitted. "Why would I not come? Reality, responsibility, a dozen advisors telling you this is a terrible idea." Emma wrapped her hands around her warm mug. "I'm guessing you have people whose job is to keep you from making mistakes." Alexander's expression turned rueful. "You're not wrong. James, my private secretary, gave me quite a lecture this morning about appropriate associations and maintaining proper boundaries. He's concerned I'm being impulsive." "Are you?" "Absolutely." Alexander flagged down the barista and ordered a black coffee. "But here's what I've learned. Some of the best decisions I've ever made looked impulsive to other people. Coming to New York was impulsive. Walking through that neighborhood alone was impulsive and admittedly foolish. But meeting you, that doesn't feel like a mistake." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest, but she forced herself to stay grounded. "Tell me about your world, Alexander. Help me understand what I'm walking into." Alexander's coffee arrived, and he took a moment before answering. His fingers wrapped around the cup as if drawing warmth from it. "I was born into a title that's been in my family for 400 years. The estate in Northumberland is massive. A castle, really, though we call it Ashford Manor. 200 rooms, 30 staff members, thousands of acres. I grew up learning that I wasn't just myself. I was the representation of generations of history, responsibility, tradition." "That sounds lonely," Emma said softly. "It was. It is." Alexander met her eyes. "My parents died when I was 22, a car accident on the M1. Suddenly I wasn't just the heir anymore. I was the duke, responsible for everything. The estate, the investments, the families who depend on us for employment, the charities, the public appearances. Every decision I make affects hundreds of people. And marriage? That's part of the responsibility too. According to my late father's will, yes. He included a stipulation. I must marry by my 35th birthday, or the family trust goes into a conservatorship managed by a board of trustees. I lose control over the estate's future." Alexander's jaw tightened. He thought he was protecting the legacy. Instead, he created a countdown clock. "I turned 35 in 3 months. Emma's eyes widened. "That's why you're here? To find a wife?" "Partly. I'm in New York for business investments, but yes, there's an expectation that I'll make a decision soon. Catherine and women like her have been positioned as suitable matches. Old families, proper breeding, understanding of the role. And you don't want that." "I want what I saw in your eyes that night in the rain," Alexander said intensely. "Genuine emotion, real connection. Someone who sees me as Alexander, not as the Duke of Northumberland. Someone who would kneel in the rain for a stranger without calculating the cost." Emma's heart raced, but her practical side, the side that had been burned before, pushed back. "That's a beautiful sentiment, Alexander, but real life isn't a moment in the rain. Real life is complicated. It's mortgages and bills and not fitting into the world someone else inhabits. I've already been in a relationship where I wasn't enough as I was. I can't do that again." "You think you wouldn't be enough?" Alexander looked genuinely shocked. "Emma, you're the most real person I've met in years. Everyone in my world is performing constantly, saying what's expected, wearing the right clothes, maintaining the right image. You just exist. Honestly, that's not something money or breeding can teach, but it's also not something your world values." Emma countered gently. "I heard Catherine at the gallery. I'm just staff, remember? I don't have the right background, the right education, the right anything. Catherine doesn't speak for me, but she speaks for your world, and eventually that world will matter. It has to. You just told me hundreds of people depend on you, that you have responsibilities you can't ignore. How long before choosing me becomes choosing between me and everything else?" Alexander was quiet, and Emma saw the truth in his eyes. He couldn't promise that wouldn't happen, because it would. It was inevitable. "I don't have easy answers," Alexander finally said, "but I know that walking away from you without trying feels like the bigger mistake. Can we just take this one day at a time, get to know each other without worrying about everything else yet?" Emma wanted to say no, wanted to protect herself, but she'd already made her choice when she agreed to meet him. "One day at a time," she agreed, "but we need to be honest with each other. No pretending things aren't complicated when they are." "Deal." Alexander's smile returned, softer this time. "So tell me about Emma Clark, not the woman who saved me, but the real you. What do you love? What do you dream about?" They talked for 2 hours, their coffees growing cold as conversation flowed easily. Emma told him about growing up in Brooklyn, about her grandmother who'd worked as a seamstress and taught Emma to see beauty in details, about studying art history at NYU on scholarships, about her dreams of maybe opening her own small gallery someday, though she laughed at how impossible that seemed. Alexander listened like every word mattered, asking questions that showed he was truly hearing her, not just waiting for his turn to talk. When she mentioned her parents' death when she was 8, a subway accident she barely remembered, his hand found hers across the table, a gesture of comfort that felt natural rather than presumptuous. He told her about Ashford Manor, about growing up in rooms filled with portraits of ancestors whose expectations seemed to watch his every move, about his younger sister Victoria, who lived in London and was the only person who never treated him like a title, about his love for American jazz music, something he'd discovered in college and that still felt like his personal rebellion against classical tradition. "Victoria would like you," Alexander said. "She's always telling me I need to meet someone real. Someone who isn't impressed by the whole Duke thing. I'm a little impressed, Emma admitted with a smile. I mean, you have a castle. That's objectively impressive. 200 rooms is mainly just 200 rooms to maintain, Alexander said wryly. When I was a child, I used to get lost. The East Wing has been closed off for years because we can't afford the heating bills. Emma laughed at the absurdity of it, worrying about heating bills in a castle, but she also heard the genuine concern in his voice. The weight of maintaining something massive and historical and expensive. They walked through Greenpoint after leaving the cafe, past converted warehouses and vintage shops, street art covering brick walls. Alexander was fascinated by everything, asking questions about the neighborhood, about the people, about the way New York functioned for those who actually lived and worked here rather than just visiting. It's different from my New York, he admitted as they paused at a small park overlooking the East River, Manhattan's skyline glittering across the water. I usually stay in Midtown, attend functions at the Plaza or the Metropolitan Club, see the city through car windows and private rooms. This is real. This is my New York, Emma said. The one where you know your bodega guy by name, where you have a favorite spot on the subway platform, where you can find amazing food from every culture in the world for under $10. It's messy and crowded and sometimes overwhelming, but it's alive. Alexander looked at her with such warmth that Emma felt her carefully constructed walls cracking. Show me more, he said. Show me your New York. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma did exactly that. They met for lunch at a tiny Thai place in the East Village where the owner recognized Emma and gave them extra spring rolls. They spent an afternoon at the Brooklyn Museum, where Emma gave Alexander her own private tour, sharing stories about the artwork that weren't in any guidebook. They walked across the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, tourist-packed but beautiful, talking about everything and nothing. Alexander was attentive and curious, asking about Emma's life in ways that Marcus never had. He wanted to know about her work, her friendships with Sarah and the other gallery employees, her thoughts on art and culture and the world. He listened when she talked about the frustrations of her job, dealing with difficult collectors, the challenge of being taken seriously as a young woman in the art world, and offered perspective without trying to fix everything. In return, Emma learned about Alexander's world, the constant pressure of public life, the business decisions that affected entire communities, the lonely reality of being surrounded by people but feeling truly seen by almost no one. She met Victoria via video call, Alexander's sister, proving to be warm and irreverent, immediately grilling Emma about her intentions and then declaring her approval. Finally, someone normal, Victoria had said with characteristic bluntness. Emma, please save my brother from the endless parade of titled bores trying to become a duchess. He's been absolutely miserable. But reality had a way of intruding on their carefully constructed bubble. The first crack appeared when they went to a small jazz club in Greenwich Village. Emma had planned it as a surprise, remembering Alexander's love for jazz. The club was intimate, dimly lit, with a talented trio playing Miles Davis covers. They'd found a small table in the back, and for a few hours everything felt perfect. Then Emma felt eyes on them. She turned to see a woman at the bar, phone raised, clearly taking photos. Within an hour, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Why are you trending on Twitter? The photos had hit social media immediately. Mystery woman with Duke of Northumberland. The headlines ranged from curious to cruel. Comments speculated about Emma's identity, her background, whether she was appropriate for someone of Alexander's status. Some defended her right to date whoever she wanted. Others called her a social climber. Worse names Emma tried not to read. I'm sorry, Alexander said tightly, scrolling through his own phone with visible frustration. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. James warned me this would happen if we were seen together publicly. It's okay, Emma said, though her hands trembled slightly. I knew this was a possibility. It's not okay. You deserve privacy. You deserve to live your life without strangers dissecting your every move. Alexander reached across the table, taking her hand. We can be more careful. Private dinners, places where we're less likely to be recognized. But being more careful meant being more hidden, and Emma felt the weight of that over the following days. Alexander's schedule became increasingly demanding. Meetings with investors, calls with estate managers in England, formal dinners he attended without her. When they did see each other, it was in out-of-the-way places, careful to avoid cameras. The spontaneity of their early dates replaced by calculation. The pressure mounted from both sides. Mrs. Chen called Emma into her office 3 days after the photos surfaced. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Are you involved with the Duke of Northumberland? Emma's stomach sank. We've been spending time together, yes. Mrs. Chen's expression was complicated, not angry but concerned. I'm not judging your personal life, Emma, but I need you to understand something. Our gallery's reputation is built on professionalism, on being taken seriously in a competitive market. If collectors believe you're using your position here to socially network with wealthy clients, I'm not, Emma said quickly. I met Alexander before I knew who he was. I helped him when he was hurt, and we just connected. It has nothing to do with the gallery. I believe you, Mrs. Chen said gently, but perception matters in this business. I've already had 2 collectors make comments suggesting you gave the Duke special treatment at our exhibition. It's not true, but the rumor itself is damaging. Emma felt sick. Her job, her career, everything she'd worked for, suddenly at risk. because she'd followed her heart. What are you saying? I'm saying be careful. I value you, Emma, and I don't want to lose you, but I also can't have the gallery's reputation compromised. Just think about what you're doing. About whether this relationship is worth the cost. The conversation haunted Emma. That evening, she met Alexander at his hotel suite, the only truly private place they had. He'd ordered dinner in, but Emma barely touched her food. What's wrong? Alexander asked, reading her mood immediately. Emma told him about Mrs. Chen's concerns, about the rumors, about feeling like she was risking everything she'd built. I worked so hard to get where I am, she said, fighting tears. I've spent years proving I'm good at what I do, that I deserve to be taken seriously. And now people think I'm just trying to date my way into a better life. That's absurd. Anyone who knows you would never think that. But they don't know me, Alexander. They just see photos of a gallery assistant with a duke and draw their own conclusions. Emma stood up, pacing the elegant hotel room that felt more like a cage than a sanctuary. And it's not just my job. Sarah told me Marcus is spreading stories about me, saying I left him for someone richer. My mother keeps calling, worried about articles she's reading online. This isn't sustainable. Alexander stood too, crossing to her. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe everyone was right. Maybe our worlds are too different. Maybe trying to force this to work is just going to hurt us both. I don't believe that. Alexander's voice was intense. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, there are challenges. But Emma, I'm falling in love with you. These past 2 weeks have been the first time I've felt genuinely happy in years. Doesn't that count for something? Emma's breath caught. He loved her. Part of her wanted to say it back, to give in to the feeling she'd been fighting. But the practical part of her, the part that had already survived one painful breakup, held back. Love isn't always enough, she whispered. Sometimes life gets in the way. Before Alexander could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, frustration crossing his face. It's James, I should take it, Emma said. I'll give you privacy. She stepped onto the hotel room's balcony, the cold November air biting through her sweater. Below, New York sprawled in its usual chaos, lights and movement and millions of people living their separate lives. Somewhere down there was her apartment, her job, her real life, the one that didn't include luxury hotels and titles and impossible choices. Behind her, she heard Alexander's voice rising. I understand the timeline, James, but I won't be rushed into a decision about my entire future. No, Catherine is not acceptable. Because I don't love her, that's why. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. Alexander needed to marry in 3 months or lose control of his estate. She was complicating his life, making his necessary choice harder. Maybe the kindest thing she could do was step back, let him find someone suitable, someone whose presence didn't cause problems. The balcony door opened. Alexander stepped out, his face tight with stress. I'm sorry. Estate business. It's okay. Emma turned to face him. Alexander, I think we need to be realistic here. You have responsibilities, deadlines, an entire world of people depending on you. I'm a complication you don't need. You're not a complication. You're the first real thing that's happened to me in years. But real doesn't always mean right. Your deadline is in 3 months. You need to focus on finding someone appropriate. Someone who fits into your world. Someone who won't cost you everything you're responsible for. What if I don't want appropriate? Alexander's voice cracked slightly. What if I want you? Emma felt tears burning her eyes. Then you're going to have to choose. Because I can't be the reason you lose your estate, your legacy, everything your family built. That's too much pressure, too much responsibility for what we have. So you're giving up? Just like that? I'm being practical. I'm thinking about consequences. About what happens 3 months from now when you're forced to choose between me and everything else. Better to face reality now than get more hurt later. Alexander stared at her, and Emma saw the moment he realized she was serious. I'm not giving up on this. On us. Maybe you should. Emma grabbed her coat from inside, needing to leave before she broke down completely. Maybe we both should. While we still can. She left before he could argue further, before she could see the pain in his eyes and change her mind. In the elevator down, Emma finally let the tears come, sobbing quietly into her hands while the numbers descended. 35. 34. 33. Counting down like Alexander's deadline, like the time they didn't have. Outside, the city swallowed her back into its anonymous embrace. Emma walked for blocks, not caring about direction, just needing to move. Eventually, she found herself at her apartment building, climbing the 5 flights on autopilot, collapsing onto her bed fully clothed. Her phone buzzed with texts. Alexander, Sarah, even one from Victoria asking if she was okay. Emma ignored them all. She'd done the right thing, the practical thing, the thing that protected both of them from more pain later. So why did it feel like the worst mistake she'd ever made? Emma stared at the ceiling, at the cracks she'd memorized during countless sleepless nights, and wondered when protecting herself had become synonymous with running away, when being practical had meant denying what her heart knew to be true. She'd saved Alexander's life that rainy night, but maybe, somewhere along the way, he'd been trying to save hers too, and she'd just thrown that chance away. 3 weeks had passed since Emma walked out of Alexander's hotel room, and they felt like the longest weeks of her life. January arrived with bitter cold, the kind that made New York feel harsh and unforgiving. Emma threw herself into work, accepting every extra project Mrs. Chen offered, staying late at the gallery, filling her days with anything that kept her mind occupied. But the nights were harder. Quiet hours in her apartment where she couldn't escape the memories of Alexander's laugh, his hand in hers, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious. Sarah had stopped by multiple times, bringing takeout and tissues, letting Emma talk through the same circular thoughts over and over. "I did the right thing," Emma would say. "I had to let him go." "Did you, though?" Sarah would counter gently. "Or did you just get scared?" Emma didn't have a good answer for that. The social media frenzy had died down after a week. New scandals, new stories, the internet's attention span moving on. But Emma still saw occasional articles about Alexander attending a charity gala, meeting with British embassy officials, photographed at formal dinners. Often, Catherine was beside him in the photos, beautiful and poised, looking every inch the duchess she was born to be. It hurt more than Emma expected. She'd been the one to walk away, but seeing Alexander moving on, or appearing to, felt like losing him all over again. Emma was arranging a new display at the gallery on a Thursday afternoon when Mrs. Chen called her into the office. Her employer's expression was kind but serious, and Emma's stomach dropped, fearing another conversation about her reputation. "Emma, sit down. I have something to show you." Mrs. Chen handed her a thick envelope with an embossed seal, the same seal Emma remembered from Alexander's note weeks ago. "What is this?" "It was delivered this morning by courier. It's addressed to the gallery, but I think you should open it." With trembling hands, Emma broke the seal. Inside was a formal letter on heavy paper, along with a certified check that made her gasp at the number of zeros. "Chen Contemporary Gallery. I am writing to commission a special exhibition celebrating emerging American artists who demonstrate exceptional talent but lack the financial backing to showcase their work professionally. I believe art should be accessible to all who have the passion and skill to create it, regardless of their economic circumstances. The enclosed donation should cover exhibition costs, marketing, and artist stipends for at least 3 shows. I trust Mrs. Chen's judgment in selecting the artists, but I would particularly value input from Miss Emma Clark, whose eye for authentic talent is unmatched. This donation comes with no strings attached and no expectation of recognition. I simply believe in supporting those who see beauty where others overlook it. Respectfully, Alexander Ashford, Duke of Northumberland. Emma read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. It was so perfectly Alexander, generous, thoughtful, using his privilege to help others, and he'd included her name, giving her credit, elevating her role even after she'd pushed him away. "Emma, this is extraordinary," Mrs. Chen said, her own eyes bright. "This donation could change everything for the gallery. We could take real risks on unknown artists, give opportunities to people who deserve them. And he specifically mentioned you. He's trying to help me," Emma whispered, "even now. Or maybe he just believes in you, the way you believe in the art we show here." Mrs. Chen squeezed Emma's hand. "I was wrong before about being careful. I let fear of perception guide my advice. But this man clearly sees your worth, professionally and personally. Maybe you should think about that." Emma clutched the letter, Alexander's words swimming before her eyes. She'd been so focused on protecting herself, on being practical, that she'd forgotten what she'd learned that rainy November night. Sometimes the right choice was the hard one, the scary one, the one that required courage. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment with Sarah, the letter spread on her coffee table between them. "He loves you," Sarah said simply. "This isn't just about the donation. He's showing you that he sees you, supports your dreams, wants you to succeed even if you're not together. But we can't be together. His deadline is in 2 months now. He needs to marry someone appropriate, someone who fits his world. I'd just be in the way of what he needs to do." "Emma, listen to yourself. You're deciding for him, protecting him from a choice he should make himself. What if you're what he needs? What if losing the estate matters less to him than losing you? That's too much pressure. Love is pressure." Sarah's voice rose with frustration. "It's scary and risky, and sometimes it means choosing something uncertain over something safe. You did that the night you helped him. You chose compassion over your engagement to Marcus. Why can't you choose love now? Because what if I'm not enough?" Emma's voice broke. "What if I try and his world still rejects me? What if he resents me later for what he gave up? And what if none of that happens? What if you're enough exactly as you are, and the only person who doesn't see that is you?" Sarah's words echoed in Emma's mind long after her friend left. Emma stood at her apartment window, watching the city lights flicker like stars, thinking about choices and courage, and the difference between protecting herself and simply running away. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Emma, it's Victoria. I know my brother would kill me for contacting you, but I need you to know something. He's miserable, absolutely gutted. He goes through the motions, meetings, dinners, doing what's expected, but the light is gone from him, the real him. The one who calls me laughing about jazz clubs and Brooklyn cafes. That Alexander disappeared when you left. I'm not telling you what to do, but I thought you should know what your choice cost. Not just him. Both of you." Emma stared at the message, her heart hammering. She'd told herself that Alexander would move on, would find someone suitable, would be fine. She hadn't let herself imagine that he was hurting too, that walking away had wounded them both. Before she could second-guess herself, Emma pulled out her laptop and opened a blank document. If she was going to do this, she needed to be honest, completely, vulnerably honest. About her fears, her feelings, everything she'd been too scared to say. She wrote for 2 hours, pouring her heart onto the page. When she finished, she read it through once, then saved it, and attached it to an email. Her finger hovered over the send button. This was it, the moment of choice. She could send this and risk everything. Her heart, her pride, the safety of her carefully rebuilt life. Or she could close the laptop and stay safe, stay protected, stay alone. Emma thought about Alexander's eyes in that hospital room, the way he'd gripped her wrist and asked her not to go. She thought about his laugh in the Brooklyn cafe, his fascination with her world, his vulnerability when he admitted she made him feel seen. She thought about the donation letter, about a man who supported her dreams even when she'd pushed him away. She thought about the person she'd been that rainy night, brave enough to kneel in the rain, to choose compassion over convenience, to risk her engagement for a stranger's life. When had she stopped being that person? Emma pressed send before fear could stop her. The response came faster than she expected. Just 2 words, meet me. An address followed, not his hotel, but a location in Greenwich Village. Emma recognized it immediately. The small art studio where she volunteered teaching art classes to underprivileged kids every Saturday morning. How did he know about that? Emma grabbed her coat and rushed out, taking the subway even though it was nearly 9 o'clock at night. The studio was in a community center, usually closed by this hour, but the lights were on when Emma arrived. She pushed open the door hesitantly. Alexander stood in the middle of the studio, surrounded by children's artwork taped to the walls, bright, messy, honest creations. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes she hadn't seen before, but when he saw her, relief flooded his face. How did you know about this place? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victoria told me. She said you mentioned it during one of your video calls, said it was your favorite place in the city, where you felt most yourself. Alexander took a step closer but didn't touch her, as if afraid she might run again. I've been coming here every evening this week, hoping you'd show up. The director was kind enough to let me wait. You've been waiting for me? I'd wait forever if that's what it took. Alexander's voice was raw with emotion. Emma, I read your email. Every word, and I need you to hear me say this. You are enough, exactly as you are. You've always been enough. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. But your deadline, your estate, everything you're responsible for. I don't care. The words came out fierce, absolute. I spent 3 weeks trying to convince myself I could choose duty over you, trying to imagine marrying someone appropriate, living the life everyone expects. I can't do it, I won't. Alexander, you can't just throw away 400 years of history. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing what matters. He closed the distance between them, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. That night you saved me. You taught me something. You showed me that some moments demand courage, that sometimes you have to choose what's right over what's easy. I'm choosing you, Emma. I'm choosing love over legacy, truth over tradition. But what about the estate, the trust? There are other options. Legal challenges to my father's will, alternative arrangements with the trustees, ways to maintain the estate without surrendering my right to choose my own wife. My solicitors have been working on it. It won't be simple, and I might lose some control, but I won't lose everything. And even if I did, his voice cracked slightly, even if choosing you meant losing Ashford Manor entirely, I'd still choose you, because you're my home now. You're where I belong. Emma sobbed openly now, years of fear and self-protection crumbling away. I'm scared. I'm terrified of not being enough, of disappointing you, of your world rejecting me. Then be scared with me, be terrified with me, but don't run from me. Alexander's thumbs brushed away her tears. I'm not Marcus. I don't need you to be anything other than who you are. Your kindness, your passion, your enormous heart. That's what I fell in love with. That's what I need. I love you too, Emma finally said, the words she'd been holding back for weeks. I've loved you since that night in the rain, and it terrified me because I knew loving you would change everything. It will change everything, Alexander agreed, pulling her close. But change isn't always bad. Sometimes it's exactly what we need. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Emma melted into him, feeling like she'd finally come home after being lost. Around them, children's artwork witnessed the moment. Messy, imperfect, beautiful creations that didn't follow rules but came straight from the heart. When they finally pulled apart, Emma laughed through her tears. So, what happens now? We still have to figure out how this actually works. We figure it out together, one day at a time, remember? Alexander smiled, that genuine expression that transformed his whole face. I have a proposal, though. Not that kind of proposal, he added quickly when Emma's eyes widened. Not yet, but I want you to come to England with me. Meet Victoria properly. See Ashford Manor. Understand my world, and I want to keep learning about yours. Both worlds together. I have work. Mrs. Chen already approved a month's leave. I may have called her yesterday, hoping you'd give me another chance. She said you deserved time to figure out your future, and that your job would be waiting when you return. Alexander looked almost shy. I might have also mentioned I'm considering funding a permanent scholarship program through the Gallery for Emerging Artists. She was receptive. Emma laughed, shaking her head. You're unbelievable. Planning my life before I even agreed to see you again. I prefer to think of it as being optimistic. Alexander's smile faded into something more serious. Emma, I know this won't be easy. There will be people like Catherine who look down on you. Traditions that seem ridiculous, expectations that feel suffocating. My world has problems. Real ones. But I promise you this, I will stand beside you through all of it. I will never let anyone make you feel less than extraordinary. And I promise to be patient with your world, to try to understand the responsibility you carry, to support you even when it's hard. Emma took his hands in hers. But I also need you to promise that if this becomes too much, if choosing me costs you more than you can afford, you'll tell me. I need honesty. Always. Always. Alexander agreed. Complete honesty, no matter what. They stayed in the art studio for another hour, talking about logistics and fears and hopes. Alexander told her about the legal battles ahead with his father's will, about the trustees who would fight his choice, about the society columnists who would scrutinize their relationship. Emma told him about her own fears, of being paraded as a curiosity, of losing herself trying to fit in, of eventually not being enough. But with each fear voiced, it became smaller, more manageable, because they were facing it together. There's something else, Alexander said as they prepared to leave. I want to find the men who attacked me that night, not for revenge, but to help them. James tracked them down. They were desperate, homeless, turned to crime out of necessity. I'm working with social services to get them proper support, job training, housing. You taught me that night that helping people matters. I want to keep learning that lesson. Emma's heart swelled. This was the man she'd fallen in love with, someone who saw his privilege as responsibility, who chose compassion over punishment, who wanted to make the world better rather than just exist in it comfortably. They took the subway back to Emma's apartment together, Alexander fascinated by the entire experience, the screech of the train, the diversity of people, the street musicians performing at the station. Emma saw her city through his eyes and fell in love with both all over again. At her building, Alexander walked her to her door but didn't invite himself in. I should go. We both need sleep and tomorrow we have plans to make. Tomorrow, Emma agreed. Then, before he could leave, she pulled him close for one more kiss. Thank you for not giving up on me, on us. Thank you for being brave enough to try again. Alexander touched his forehead to hers. Sleep well, Emma Clark. Sleep well, Your Grace. He laughed at the formal title, the sound rich and happy. As he descended the stairs, Emma heard him whistling, a jazz tune she recognized from their night at the club. 6 months later, Emma stood at the window of Ashford Manor's East Wing, watching the English countryside roll out in shades of green under a July sky. Behind her, the room bustled with activity. Victoria directing caterers, Mrs. Chen arranging artwork for the charity exhibition opening tonight, Sarah laughing with Alexander's estate manager about something Emma couldn't hear. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. Emma had indeed gone to England, spending a month at Ashford Manor, and falling in love with its drafty corridors and ridiculous history. She'd met trustees who'd been skeptical until she'd helped Alexander propose new community programs for the estate. She'd endured society events where women like Catherine tried to make her feel small, but with Alexander beside her and Victoria backing her up, Emma had found her footing. Alexander's legal team had successfully challenged portions of his father's will, establishing that he could maintain control of the estate regardless of his marriage choice. The price had been increased oversight from trustees and mandatory financial reporting, but Alexander had accepted these terms gladly. Worth it, he'd told Emma, 1,000 times worth it. Emma had returned to New York after that first month, but she and Alexander had traveled back and forth constantly. He'd spent weeks in Brooklyn, continuing to explore her world. She'd returned to England for holidays, slowly building relationships with staff and community members who were beginning to accept her. The gallery had thrived with Alexander's scholarship program. 3 exhibitions of emerging artists had been wildly successful, launching careers and drawing international attention. Mrs. Chen had promoted Emma to associate curator, recognizing her role in the gallery's new direction. And through it all, Emma and Alexander had grown together, learning each other's worlds, supporting each other's dreams, choosing each other daily despite the complications. Emma, stop daydreaming and come help me, Victoria called from across the room. These flowers are not arranging themselves and your perfectionism is needed. Emma laughed and turned from the window. As she crossed the room, her hand unconsciously touched the simple ring on her finger. Not an engagement ring yet, but a promise ring Alexander had given her last month. A promise of a future they were building together, one careful choice at a time. You look happy, Mrs. Chen observed, coming to stand beside Emma. Truly happy. Not performing, not trying, just content. I am, Emma realized with some surprise. It's not perfect. We still have challenges, cultural differences, moments when his world and mine feel incompatible, but we're figuring it out together. That's all anyone can do, Mrs. Chen said wisely. Love isn't about finding someone who fits perfectly into your existing life. It's about building a new life together, messy and complicated and real. The charity exhibition that evening was a triumph. Alexander had invited prominent collectors to view work by artists from both England and America, raising substantial funds for art education programs. Emma moved through the crowd with confidence. No longer the uncertain gallery assistant, but someone who'd earned her place through passion and knowledge. She caught Alexander watching her from across the room, his expression full of pride and love. He was deep in conversation with a Russian collector, but when their eyes met, he smiled, that private smile just for her. Later, After the guests had left and the caterers were cleaning up, Emma and Alexander walked through Ashford Manor's gardens. The summer evening was long, the sky still light at nearly 10 o'clock, roses blooming in carefully tended beds. "I have something to tell you," Alexander said, stopping beside an old fountain that predated the main house by a century. "The trustees met yesterday. They've officially approved all the estate modernization plans we proposed. The community center, the apprenticeship programs, opening parts of the manor for public education. Everything." "Alexander, that's wonderful." Emma threw her arms around him. "There's more. They also said," he paused, his hand settling on her waist, "they said they were impressed by my choice of partner, that you've brought fresh perspective and genuine care to the estate, that you're exactly the kind of Duchess Ashford Manor needs for the future." Emma's breath caught. "Duchess?" Alexander pulled back slightly, reaching into his pocket. When he dropped to one knee on the ancient stone path, Emma's hands flew to her mouth. "Emma Clark, 6 months ago you saved my life. But you did more than that. You saved me. You reminded me what matters, taught me that courage means choosing love over fear, showed me that real connection transcends any social barrier." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a ring that was both elegant and understated, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. "I know we said we'd take our time, but I also know I don't want to spend another day without you being certain of my commitment. Will you marry me? Will you be my Duchess, my partner, my home?" Tears streamed down Emma's face as she nodded, unable to speak past the emotion flooding through her. Alexander slipped the ring on her finger, then stood and pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise, a beginning, a forever. "Yes," Emma finally managed. "Yes to all of it, the complications, the challenges, the messy reality of combining our worlds. Yes to choosing each other every single day." "Every single day," Alexander echoed, his forehead pressed to hers. "Starting with today, continuing into whatever comes next." They stood in the garden as twilight deepened, holding each other close, two people from different worlds who'd found their way to the same place. Around them, Ashford Manor stood solid and ancient, but no longer feeling like a weight or a burden. It was simply home, imperfect, demanding, beautiful, just like love itself. Emma thought back to that rainy November night, to the choice she'd made to stop and help a stranger. She'd lost her engagement that night, lost the future she'd been planning, but she'd found something infinitely more valuable: herself, her courage, and eventually, a love that didn't require her to be anything other than who she was. "What are you thinking?" Alexander asked softly. "That sometimes the best things in life start with getting rained on," Emma replied with a smile. Alexander laughed, that wonderful sound that still made her heart skip. "Well, it's supposed to rain tomorrow. Want to go for a walk in it? For old time's sake. Only if you promise not to get stabbed this time." "Deal." Hand in hand, they walked back toward the manor, toward their future, toward all the messy, complicated, beautiful days ahead. Behind them, the fountain continued its centuries-old song, water flowing endlessly forward, just like time, just like love, just like two people brave enough to choose each other against all odds. And in the growing darkness, if you listened carefully, you might have heard the echo of Emma's grandmother's words, carried on the evening breeze. "Helping someone isn't about whether you can afford to, it's about whether you can afford not to." Emma had helped a stranger in the rain, and in return she'd found everything she didn't know she'd been searching for.